What if I told you that the same woman who removed me from the family reunion guest list was standing inside my building when she did it? The fluorescent lights in that parking garage had a hum to them. Low, constant, the kind of sound you only notice when everything else goes quiet. I was sitting in my car on level 2 of Magnolia Hall, engine off, phone in my hand, reading the same message for the 4th time. My mother had sent it to the family group chat at 2:17 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Real family only. Renee isn't on the list. Just like that. 11 words. No call before, no conversation after. I set my phone face down on the passenger seat and looked up through the windshield at the building entrance directly in front of me. The brushed steel letters above the door. The planter boxes I had approved myself in 2022. The entrance my property manager Jerome had repainted the previous spring in a color I had personally selected from a swatch book. I sat there for a long time, not because I was devastated, though something in my chest had gone very still, but because I was thinking. And when I finally picked my phone back up, I wasn't opening the group chat. I was opening my property management app. That was the moment I realized I had a choice to make. My name is Renee Caldwell. I'm 34 years old. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and for the past 6 years I have worked in commercial real estate investment. Before that, I spent 5 years as a paralegal at a mid-sized litigation firm in downtown Atlanta, which is where I learned that the most powerful thing you can possess in any conflict is not a loud voice. It's a paper trail. I am the youngest of 3 siblings. My brother Marcus is 41, my sister Diane is 38, and I am the one nobody in my family ever thought to ask about. Not because I was difficult or distant, but because I had always appeared to have everything handled. Quiet competence, it turns out, is the easiest thing to overlook. In 2021, I acquired Magnolia Hall through my single-member LLC, Oaks Bridge Properties. It is a mid-sized commercial event venue in DeKalb County. 12,000 square feet, 2 adjoining suites, a fully equipped catering kitchen, and a courtyard that holds up to 110 guests. I paid $310,000 for it with a silent business partner, refinanced it 18 months later, and have operated it at a steady profit since the second quarter of 2022. Nobody in my family knew I owned it, not because I was hiding it deliberately, but because not one person had ever once sat across from me at a dinner table and asked what I was actually building with my life. I was the background character, the reliable one, the sister who showed up, handled things, and quietly returned to whatever corner of the room she'd come from. What they never considered, not once in 34 years, was what might happen if that background character had been building something they were all about to walk directly into. I want to be fair about this, because fairness matters to me even when it hasn't always been extended in return. My family is not made up of cruel people. They're made up of people who found it very easy to forget about me, which in some ways is its own kind of cruelty, just the quiet version that never leaves marks. My brother Marcus received $22,000 from my parents toward the down payment on his house in 2019. I know the exact number because my mother mentioned it at Easter dinner with the same casual tone she used to discuss the weather. I had purchased my first investment property 8 months earlier, alone, without a cosigner, without a conversation, without so much as a congratulations card on the kitchen counter. My mother's response when I told her was, "That's so good, Renee. You've always been so independent." She meant it as a compliment. I received it as a description of something that had been decided for me long before I had any say in it. Then there was Diane. In 2020, my mother quietly funded $14,000 toward the startup costs of Diane's catering company. I found out not through any family conversation, but through a comment Diane made at Thanksgiving, offhand, between bites, the way you mentioned something everyone already knows. I did not already know. I smiled and passed the sweet potatoes and said nothing. Then there was the group chat. In the spring of last year, I noticed my messages were going unanswered for unusually long stretches.
A cousin eventually told me, gently and with visible discomfort, that I had been removed from the main family thread. When I brought it up to my mother, she said, "Oh, you know how these things happened. Someone must have hit the wrong button." Nobody added me back. I stopped mentioning it. I was cataloging all of it, carefully, the way a former paralegal does, even when she tells herself she isn't. Then came the reunion. The announcement came on a Friday morning in a group chat I had been quietly re-added to sometime in March, though nobody acknowledged the gap or explained the return. My mother had typed it out herself, which I could tell because she always capitalizes the first letter of every word like she is writing a formal invitation. "We are doing a family reunion this summer, 35 years strong. Diane is handling the catering. More details coming." Cousins responded immediately. Heart emojis, fire emojis, people already asking about the dress code and the parking situation. I scrolled through the thread and noticed something. There was no venue mentioned yet. I found out 3 days later through a cousin's Instagram story. She had posted a screenshot of the booking confirmation, excited, tagging everyone. The location listed clearly at the top: Magnolia Hall, Suites 1 and 2, DeKalb County. I stared at that screen for a moment longer than was probably visible from the outside. Then I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, warm and unhurried, the way she sounds when she doesn't anticipate any difficulty. I asked her directly about the reunion. She told me it was coming together beautifully. I asked if I was on the guest list. There was a pause, brief but specific, the kind that tells you a decision has already been made and the person is simply selecting their wording. Then she said, "Renee, it's just going to be immediate family this time. You know how these things get crowded." I asked her, calmly, whether I was not considered immediate family. Another pause, longer this time. Then, "Don't make this difficult, baby. It's just one afternoon." I told her I understood. I told her to enjoy the planning process. I told her I would not make it difficult. Every word I said was true. I hung up the phone and sat at my kitchen table for a moment, doing nothing dramatic, just sitting. Then I opened my laptop. I pulled up the Oaksbridge Properties Management portal. I typed in the address: Magnolia Hall, Suites 1 and 2, DeKalb County. Active booking confirmed. Event date locked. Guest count filed at 91 people. Deposit received. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't even close to the beginning.
I did not call Jerome that night. I made dinner instead. Pasta with olive oil and garlic, the kind of meal you make when you need your hands to be doing something ordinary while your mind is doing something else entirely. I ate at the kitchen table with the laptop open beside me, and I read every line of the active booking file for Magnolia Hall. The reservation had been made 6 weeks earlier under Diane's catering company, D&D Elegant Events LLC. The deposit of $3,400 had cleared on a Thursday. The signed liability waiver was on file. The event layout request had been submitted: round tables for 91 guests, a dance floor configuration in the East Wing, full use of the catering kitchen from 10 in the morning through 11 at night. There was even a decorating access request for the Friday before the event, submitted and approved by Jerome, who had no reason to flag anything unusual because nothing about the booking was unusual. It was a clean, standard reservation. Diane had done everything correctly. Almost everything. I found it on the third read-through, buried in Section 7 of the Standard Oaksbridge Properties Venue Agreement, the clause I had drafted myself with my attorney 2 years earlier after a large event ran into a liability issue with a third-party vendor. Events with a confirmed guest count exceeding 75 persons require a secondary liability insurance rider to be submitted to the property management office no later than 21 days prior to the event date. Failure to submit constitutes a material breach of the rental agreement and forfeits the right to venue access without refund of deposit. The event was 25 days away. The insurance rider had never been submitted. The 21-day deadline had passed 4 days ago. I closed the laptop. I washed my pasta bowl. I wiped down the counter. I went and sat on my couch in the kind of quiet that has texture to it, the kind you can actually feel settling around you. I sat there for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 because I watched the clock on the wall without meaning to. Then I picked up my phone and called Jerome. I told him to pull the full file on the Magnolia Hall summer booking. I told him I would explain in the morning. I remember the exact words I said before I hung up. I said, "Send the notice, standard procedure." Jerome is the kind of property manager who does not ask unnecessary questions, which is one of the reasons I have worked with him for 3 years and intend to keep working with him for 3 more. When I called him the following morning and walked him through the compliance gaps in the Magnolia Hall booking, he listened without interrupting, pulled up the file while we were still on the phone, confirmed everything I had identified, and said simply, "You want me to send the standard notice?" I told him yes. Standard notice, standard language, nothing personal, nothing embellished, nothing that deviated by a single word from the procedure we applied to every non-compliant booking, regardless of who had made it. The first letter went out that afternoon on Oaksbridge Properties letterhead, addressed formally to D&D Elegant Events LLC. Attention, Diane. It cited the missing insurance writer, referenced Section 7 of the signed agreement, and gave the booking party 72 hours to submit full documentation or forfeit venue access and the $3,400 deposit in accordance with the terms they had already agreed to. Jerome also flagged, at my request, 2 additional compliance items I had identified during my 3rd read-through of the file. The catering kitchen access form had been signed by a representative without the authority to do so under the LLC's own operating agreement, and the noise ordinance acknowledgement, a 1-page form we required for all evening events, had never been returned. These were added to the record quietly and without urgency. 11 days before the event, a second letter went out. This one came directly from me, not from Renee Caldwell, from R. Oaksbridge, managing member. I reviewed it 4 times before I sent it. The language was precise, professional, and completely impersonal. It summarized the outstanding compliance issues, noted that the 72-hour window on the first notice had elapsed without response, and formally advised the booking party that venue access for the confirmed event date was suspended pending resolution. I did not call my mother. I did not text Diane. I did not mention any of this to Marcus or to any cousin who might carry the information back before I was ready. I sent the letter. I closed my laptop. I made tea. I watched 2 episodes of a documentary series I had been meaning to get to for months. I went to bed at 10:15, which is a perfectly reasonable hour, and I slept without any difficulty at all. The calls started the following morning at 7:42 a.m. Diane first, then Marcus 40 minutes later, then my mother, 3 calls in a row, each one going to voicemail. On the 3rd day, I answered, and I answered as the property manager. My mother called at 11:23 on a Thursday morning. I know because I had been watching my phone with the particular calm of someone who has already decided exactly what they are going to say and is simply waiting for the right moment to say it. I let it ring twice. Not to be dramatic, but because I needed one more breath of the ordinary world before I stepped into whatever came next. I answered with my property management voice, the one I use on tenant calls and vendor negotiations, measured and unhurried and completely without affect. She launched in immediately, explaining the situation with the venue, the letters, the compliance notices, the confusion, her voice carrying that specific maternal register that sits halfway between distress and accusation. She said Diane was beside herself. She said the whole event was in jeopardy. She said she could not understand how a venue could operate this way, sending notices at the last minute without any prior warning or personal courtesy. I let her finish, every word of it. Then I said, "Yes, I'm familiar with the booking, Mom. I own the building." 4 seconds of silence. I counted them, not metaphorically. I actually counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then her voice came back,
smaller than I had ever heard it, stripped of its register and its authority, just a sound a person makes when the ground has shifted beneath them without warning. She said my name, just my name, nothing attached to it. I told her calmly that the compliance notices had been sent according to standard procedure, that the terms were outlined clearly in the agreement Diane had signed, and that the deposit had been forfeited per the contract. I told her I was sorry the timing was difficult. I told her I hoped they would find a solution that worked for everyone. Then I wished her good morning and ended the call. The reunion happened on a Saturday in my aunt's backyard. 22 people, a folding table, and whatever Diane could pull together on 11 days' notice. The $3,400 deposit remained forfeited per contract terms. I spent that Saturday at the farmer's market 2 miles from my house, moving slowly between the vegetable stalls, buying tomatoes that were still warm from the morning, and a sourdough loaf with a crust that shattered when you pressed it. I drove home with the windows down. I sat on my porch that evening and watched the light change over the rooftops and felt something I had not felt in longer than I could honestly remember. Not triumph, not satisfaction exactly, just stillness. The particular stillness of a person who has finally stopped making themselves smaller to fit inside a space that was never built for them. Being underestimated by the people who were supposed to know you best is not a reflection of your worth. It never was. It was only ever a reflection of how little they were paying attention. And the moment you stop needing them to see you is the moment you finally, completely belong to yourself. If this story resonated with you, I want you to sit with something for a moment before you click away. Think about the last time you made yourself smaller for someone who never once asked you to grow. Think about the last time you funded someone's comfort at the direct expense of your own. Think about how long you have been the reliable one, the quiet one, the one everybody calls when things fall apart, but nobody thinks to call just to ask how you're doing. Because here's what I know to be true after everything I've been through. The most dangerous thing you can do to someone who has spent their entire life being overlooked is give them enough time, enough silence, and enough paperwork. I am not telling you to go out and set traps for the people who have hurt you. I am telling you to stop shrinking. Stop preemptively making yourself easier to dismiss. Stop paying for tables you were not invited to sit at. If you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to know you best, I hope this story reminded you of something important. That was never the truth about you. It was only ever the limits of their attention. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from today?